Hey, my name is Julian Hayes. I'm 24 and I live in a two-bedroom apartment on the edge of Portland's Alberta Arts District, the kind of place where the rent keeps climbing, but the walls still have that faded 1970s wallpaper nobody's bothered to strip. The building's old brick on the outside, creaky floors on the inside, and the radiator clanks like it's auditioning for a horror movie every time the temperature drops below 50. I've been here 3 years ever since I graduated with a design degree I'm still paying off, and a portfolio that gets me just enough freelance gigs to keep the lights on. For the first 2 of those years, I split the rent with my best friend, Elliot. We met freshman year in a typography class, bonded over bad coffee and worse deadlines, and moved in together the day after graduation. The apartment was perfect for two broke creatives, one bedroom each, a living room big enough for a secondhand couch and a coffee table that doubled as a cutting mat and a kitchen, where the stove tilted slightly to the left. Elliot handled the grocery runs. I handled the Wi-Fi bill. We had a system. We had a rhythm. We had takeout on Fridays and lo-fi playlists on loop while we worked until 3 in the morning. Then Elliot met Sarah. It wasn't dramatic. No blowout fight, no passive-aggressive post-it notes on the fridge. Just one Tuesday night he came home with this goofy grin and said, "I think I'm in love." 2 months later, he was packing his half of the apartment into cardboard boxes, labeled in Sarah's neat handwriting. We found a place in Southeast, he told me, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Closer to her job. Bigger kitchen. You know. I nodded, helped him carry the boxes down the narrow stairwell, and watched his beat-up Subaru disappear around the corner with a U-Haul trailer hitched to the back. Suddenly, the rent was mine alone. $1,200 a month for a place that smelled faintly of old pizza and the neighbor's weed. My freelance checks, usually enough for rent, groceries, and one overpriced beer at the bar on 23rd, were now stretched thin. I started skipping the beer. Then the groceries. Then the non-essentials, like replacing the light bulb in the hallway that had been flickering for 6 weeks. I posted an ad on Craigslist at 2 a.m. after a client ghosted me on a logo revision. Room for rent. $600 a month. Quiet clean. No pets. No drama. Must like indie music and tolerate occasional all-nighters. I didn't expect much. The last time I'd looked for a roommate, I got 3 replies. One guy who asked if he could pay in Bitcoin, one girl who wanted to know if the building allowed emotional support tarantulas, and one spam bot selling discount Viagra. But then, on a Thursday afternoon when the rain was coming down in that soft, relentless Portland way, there were 3 knocks on the door. Not the aggressive pounding of a delivery guy or the hesitant tap of a Jehovah's Witness. Just 3 polite, evenly spaced knocks. I opened the door. She was shorter than I expected, maybe 5'4", with dark brown hair pulled into a high ponytail that had started to come loose in the damp air. She wore a faded black hoodie jeans with paint splatters on the knees and chunky headphones around her neck like a scarf. A small suitcase stood beside her, the kind with a cartoon cat sticker on the handle, and wheels that looked like they'd seen better days. "Hi," she said, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm Mia. I saw your ad. Is the room still available?" I blinked. She didn't look like the Craigslist type. She looked like someone who belonged in a coffee shop with a sketchbook, not standing in my hallway that smelled faintly of burnt toast and desperation. Yeah," I said, stepping aside. "Come in. It's not much, but it's home." She smiled, not the polite, tight-lipped smile of someone already planning their escape, but a real one, the kind that reached her eyes. "I like not much," she said, less to dust. I gave her the tour, the living room with its sagging couch and the coffee table scarred from X-Acto knives. The kitchen where the stove still tilted and the fridge hummed like it was plotting something. Her room, my old office, really was at the end of the hall. Small, with a single window overlooking the maple tree that dropped leaves on the fire escape every fall. The bed was a futon I'd dragged in from the curb. The desk was a door balanced on cinder blocks. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers if she wanted it. She ran her fingers along the windowsill checking for dust, then turned to me. 600 utilities included split 50-50, I said. Internet's fast, water's hot, radiators loud but functional. She nodded like she was mentally rearranging furniture already. I'm a senior at PNCA, Interior Design. I work weird hours, but I'm quiet. Mostly, and I don't have a cat. Yet. I raised an eyebrow, yet she shrugged. Working on it. I should have asked more questions, references, credit score. Why a senior in college was looking for a room in a building full of grad students and burnout creatives. But I was tired and the rent was due in 5 days, and she didn't seem like the type to set the kitchen on fire. At least not on purpose. Move in whenever, I said. Tomorrow works. She extended her hand. Her grip was firm, her palm cool from the rain. Thanks, Julian. I didn't realize it then, but that was the moment everything tilted. Not dramatically, not with violins or slow-motion close-ups, just a quiet shift like the first drop of rain before the storm you don't see coming. The next morning, she showed up at 9 with a duffel bag, a box of art supplies, and a blender that looked like it could pulverize concrete. I was still in my sweatpants nursing a cup of coffee that tasted like regret. She took one look at the kitchen, the pile of dishes in the sink, the half-empty jar of peanut butter on the counter, and smiled again. Don't worry, she said, rolling up her sleeves. I've seen worse. I wasn't sure if she meant the apartment or me. Either way, she wasn't wrong. The first full day Mia moved in started with a blender at 6:30 in the morning. Not a gentle whir, not a polite hum. A full-on industrial roar that rattled the thin walls and yanked me out of a dream about a client who kept changing the color palette every 5 minutes. I groaned, rolled over, and buried my head under the pillow. The noise stopped after exactly 45 seconds. Then came the music. Some indie track with jangly guitars and a singer who sounded like he'd just discovered reverb. It wasn't loud enough to be obnoxious, but it was loud enough to make sure I knew she was awake. And alive. And apparently allergic to silence. I dragged myself out of bed, shuffled to the bathroom, and discovered the hot water was gone. Completely. The shower head spat out a lukewarm trickle that turned icy after 10 seconds. I stood there shivering shampoo in my hair, cursing the ancient water heater and the fact that I'd forgotten to mention the one shower at a time rule. By the time I got out, the mirror was fogged, the floor was wet, and the smell of burnt toast was drifting down the hall. Mia was in the kitchen barefoot, wearing an oversized flannel shirt that I was pretty sure had been Elliot's before he left. She was scraping something black and crispy out of the toaster with a butter knife. The blender sat on the counter, triumphant next to a glass of something green and frothy. Morning, she said, not looking up. I made smoothies. Kale, banana, almond milk. Want one? I stared at the glass. It looked like lawn clippings. I'm good with coffee. Suit yourself. She took a sip, made a face, and added more banana. Also, your toaster's a fire hazard. I think it's trying to kill us. I poured myself a mug from the pot I'd set up the night before. It was cold. Of course it was cold. You used all the hot water. She glanced over, knife paused mid-scrape. I did. Sorry. I take long showers when I'm thinking about floor plans. It's a thing. It's a thing, I repeated flat. Great. She shrugged, unapologetic, and went back to her toast autopsy. I leaned against the counter, watching her. She moved like someone who'd grown up in small spaces, efficient, no-wasted motion. She opened the fridge, pulled out a carton of eggs, cracked 2 into a pan with one hand while stirring her smoothie with the other. The stove clicked, the burner flared, and the smell of butter hit the air. I should have gone back to my room, should have put on headphones and pretended she didn't exist. But I was hungry, and the eggs smelled better than the peanut butter sandwich I'd been living on for 3 days. She flipped the eggs with a flick of her wrist. Perfect. Golden edges, runny yolks. She slid them onto a plate, sprinkled a pinch of salt, and pushed it toward me without asking. Here. You look like you haven't eaten since the Clinton administration. I took the plate. Thanks. She started on her own eggs, humming along to the music. The song had changed to something slower, dreamier. I ate standing up, leaning against the fridge. The eggs were good. Too good. I hated that they were good. You always cook like this, I asked. Only when I'm stressed? Or bored? Or awake? She took a bite, chewed thoughtfully. You always burn your eggs? I don't burn them, I caramelize them. She snorted. That's what they all say. I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it. She was right, I was a terrible cook. I could design a logo in my sleep, but I couldn't fry an egg without turning it into charcoal. I took another bite. The yolk broke, ran across the plate. I mopped it up with a piece of toast she'd somehow salvaged from the toaster. We ate in silence for a minute. The music filled the space between us, not uncomfortable, but not exactly comfortable either. Like two people sharing an elevator who didn't know which floor the other was getting off on. She finished first, rinsed her plate, and started unloading a box of art supplies onto the counter. Sketchbooks, pencils, a roll of tracing paper. She worked fast, organizing everything into neat piles. I watched her hands steady, precise. Designer hands. I recognized the callus on her index finger from holding a pencil too tight. "You're up early," I said. "Critique at 9. Professor's a tyrant. If I'm late, he'll make me present first." She didn't look up. "You deadline at noon. Client wants a rebrand for a vegan donut shop. They keep changing their mind about whether the donkey should be smiling or existential." She laughed, a short surprise sound. Existential donkey. That's a new one. I shrugged. Pays the rent. She stacked the last pencil, then turned to me. "Look, I know this is weird. New roommate, new rules. I'll try to keep the blender under control, and the music, and the hot water. But if I forget, just tell me. I'm not a mind reader." "Same," I said. "If I leave dishes in the sink or forget to take out the trash, kick my ass. A deal." She extended her hand again like we were sealing a contract. I shook it. Her grip was still firm, still cool. She grabbed her backpack, slung it over one shoulder, and headed for the door. "Oh, and Julian, yeah, your socks are in the fridge." I looked. Sure enough, a pair of balled-up gray socks sat on the middle shelf next to the milk. I didn't even remember putting them there. She was already gone, the door clicking shut behind her. I stood in the kitchen holding my empty plate, listening to the radiator clank and the faint echo of her music through the walls. I opened the fridge, grabbed the socks, and tossed them into the laundry basket in my room. Then I opened the window just a crack. The air smelled like wet leaves and coffee from the shop downstairs. I left it open. The blender started again at 6:30 the next morning. I didn't bury my head under the pillow this time. I just lay there listening to the roar, the music, the sound of someone else moving through the apartment like they belonged there. I wasn't sure how I felt about it yet, but I didn't hate it. 2 weeks in the apartment had settled into a kind of armed truce. We had rules now, unspoken but ironclad. Mia took the early shower, I took the late one. She controlled the blender before 7, I controlled the music after 10. Dishes got done within 24 hours, or they became a silent accusation. The fridge was divided by an invisible line, left side hers, right side mine, with a neutral zone in the door for condiments and the emergency beer Elliot had left behind. We nodded in the hallway, exchanged hey in the kitchen, and otherwise stayed in our lanes. It wasn't friendship. It wasn't even really coexistence. It was just survival. Then came the mouse. It was a Thursday or maybe a Friday. I'd lost track of days, somewhere between a client's 11th revision and a pitch deck that refused to die. The clock on my laptop read 1:07 a.m. I was hunched over the coffee table, headphones on, trying to make a donut logo look less like a depressed inner tube. The radiator had given up clanking and settled into a low, ominous hiss. Outside, the rain had turned into that fine mist that sneaks through every crack and makes the windows sweat. I was mid-stroke on a Bezier curve when the scream hit. It wasn't a little yelp, it wasn't a startled gasp. It was a full-throated horror movie, blood-curdling shriek that ripped through the apartment like a fire alarm. My headphones flew off, my heart jackhammered against my ribs. I was on my feet before I registered moving. Grabbing the first weapon, I saw a broom leaning against the wall from when I'd meant to sweep 3 days ago. Julianne Mia's voice, high-panicked, coming from her room. I bolted down the hall, broom raised like a jousting lance. The door was cracked open. I shoved it with my shoulder. She was standing on her desk chair, one foot on the seat, the other on the armrest, balanced like a tightrope walker in a circus from hell. Her laptop was open on the desk screen, glowing, casting blue light across her face. She had both arms wrapped around a throw pillow like it was a life raft. Her eyes were huge, fixed on the floor. There she hissed, pointing with the pillow. It ran under the dresser. I followed her finger. The room was a controlled chaos of fabric swatches, sketchbooks, and a half-built model of what looked like a tiny modernist house. On the floor, a flash of gray darted from behind the dresser to the baseboard heater. Small, fast, definitely a mouse. Stay there, I said, which was stupid because she was already 3 feet off the ground and not moving. I crept forward, broom lowered. The mouse poked its head out, whiskers twitching. I lunged. The broom handle clattered against the dresser. The mouse shot left. I swung again, missed, and my foot caught the edge of a rug. The world tilted. I went down hard, shoulder first, broom flying out of my hands and clattering against the wall. Silence. Then a sound I wasn't expecting, Mia's laugh. Not a giggle. A full, uncontrollable, snorting laugh that started in her belly and burst out like she'd been holding it in for weeks. I lay there on the floor, staring at the ceiling, one sock halfway off, and listened to her lose it. "Oh my God," she gasped between breaths. "You're the worst knight in shining armor I've ever seen." I rolled onto my side. The mouse was gone. Vanished. Probably laughing too. "I had it," I muttered. "You had the floor," she said, wiping her eyes. She was still on the chair, but her shoulders had stopped shaking. "It's under the bed now." I swear it looked at me, like it knew. I pushed myself up, rubbing my elbow. Mice don't have vendettas. This one does. She climbed down carefully, pillow still clutched to her chest. "It's been taunting me for days. I thought I was imagining it." I grabbed the broom, scanned the room. No sign of the intruder. We need traps. Or a cat. Landlord says no pets. Landlord's not here at 1 a.m. with a rodent hitman. I couldn't help it. I laughed. It started as a chuckle, then built into something that matched hers. We stood there in her room, two idiots in pajamas laughing at a mouse that had outsmarted us both. She sat on the edge of her bed, still holding the pillow. I hate mice. Like irrational childhood trauma hate. My dad used to set traps in the garage. I'd hear them snap at night. Couldn't sleep for weeks. I leaned the broom against the wall. I once lost a hard drive to a squirrel. Chewed right through the cable. 3 months of work, gone. She looked at me, eyes soft in the laptop glow. "We're a mess." "Yeah," I said. "We are." She stood, walked to the kitchen, and came back with 2 cups of instant noodles. The cheap kind, the ones that come in styrofoam cups and taste like salt and regret. She handed me one. "Truce," she said. "Truce." We sat on the living room floor, backs against the couch, eating noodles and brainstorming mouse warfare. Peanut butter on crackers, snap traps, ultrasonic repellers. A cat, if we could smuggle one past the landlord. Mochi, she decided. The cat would be gray and fat and named Mochi. I told her about the client who wanted the donkey to look spiritual but approachable. She told me about her professor who graded based on vibes. We didn't talk about the rules or the hot water or the socks in the fridge. We just talked. About nothing. About everything. At some point, the noodles were gone. The laptop had gone to sleep. The radiator had stopped hissing. Mia leaned her head back against the couch, eyes half closed. "You know," she said, voice soft, "I thought you were going to be a jerk. I thought you were going to be a nightmare." She smiled, eyes still closed. "We're not so bad." "No," I said. "We're not." She stood, stretched, and headed to her room. At the doorway, she paused. "Night, Julian. Night, Mia." I stayed on the floor a little longer, listening to the quiet. The mouse didn't come back. The blender didn't start. The music didn't play. Just the sound of rain on the window and the faint creak of her door closing. I set the empty noodle cups in the sink. Didn't wash them. Didn't care. For the first time in weeks, the apartment didn't feel empty. It felt like someone else was breathing in it too. The morning after the mouse incident, I woke up to silence. No blender, no indie guitar. Just the soft patter of rain on the fire escape and the low hum of the fridge. I lay there for a minute, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like a lopsided cloud, and realized I'd slept past 8. For the first time in months. I rolled out of bed, pulled on a hoodie, and padded to the kitchen. The counters were clean. The noodle cups from last night were washed and stacked in the drying rack. A yellow Post-it was stuck to the coffee pot, brewed at 7. "Don't let it get cold." I poured a mug. It was strong the way I liked it, with just enough creamer to cut the bitterness. I took a sip and leaned against the counter, looking out the window at the maple tree dripping in the gray light. The apartment smelled like coffee and something else, butter. Warm, golden butter. Mia was at the stove, back to me, wearing one of my old flannel shirts that hung past her thighs. Her hair was a mess, half in a bun, half falling out. She had a spatula in one hand and her phone in the other, scrolling with her thumb while the pan sizzled. The smell hit me like a memory I didn't know I had. She flipped an egg. Perfect. No char. No rubbery edges. The yolk jiggled still liquid the way I'd tried and failed to make it 100 times. Morning, I said. She glanced over her shoulder. Sit. It's almost ready. I didn't argue. I pulled out a stool at the counter, the one with the wobbly leg, and watched her work. She slid the eggs onto 2 plates, added a sprinkle of pepper, and pushed one toward me. Half cooked, she said. Like you pretend to like, but always burn. I took a bite. The yolk broke, ran across the plate, soaked into the toast she'd somehow toasted without setting off the smoke alarm. It was perfect. Thanks, I said. She sat across from me, legs tucked under her, and started eating. We didn't talk. The radio was off. The only sound was forks on ceramic and the rain.ix outside. It wasn't awkward. It was easy. After a minute, she said, I ordered traps online. Peanut butter bait. Arrives tomorrow. Mochi's still on the table, I said. She smiled. Mochi's non-negotiable. We finished eating. She rinsed the plates. I dried. We moved around each other like we'd done it 100 times. She opened the window a crack. I refilled the coffee. She left a new post-it on the fridge, open this, or I'll start charging rent for sock storage. I laughed. Out loud. She looked up surprised, then laughed too. That was the start. The days after blurred into a rhythm I didn't know I'd been missing. Mia's blender still went off at 6:30, but now I was up anyway, sketching at the table while she made smoothies. She'd slide a glass my way, kale, banana, and a splash of oat milk, and I'd drink it without complaining. She stopped using all the hot water. I stopped leaving dishes in the sink. We grocery shopped together on Sundays, arguing over cereal brands in the aisle like an old married couple. She insisted on almond milk. I insisted on real milk. We compromised on oat. One night I came home late from a client call to find her on the couch surrounded by fabric swatches and a half-built model of a mid-century chair. Mochi, the real one, a gray tabby we'd adopted from the shelter after the mousetraps failed, was curled in her lap, purring like a motor. You're home, she said, not looking up. I saved you lasagna. I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, you cooked. Don't sound so shocked. I followed the recipe. Mostly. I heated a plate in the microwave. She'd left a note on top, don't nuke it too long, or it'll explode. Trust me. We ate on the couch, Mochi between us, stealing bites of cheese. She told me about her critique her professor had called her chair design derivative, but promising. I told her about the client who wanted a logo that felt like a hug, but also screamed luxury. We laughed until Mochi jumped off in protest. Later, she helped me pick colors for a pitch deck. I helped her rearrange her model so the legs didn't wobble. We argued about fonts she liked sans serif. I liked serif with a twist and ended up scrubbing the kitchen floor at 1 in the morning because she'd spilled turmeric while trying to make golden milk and I'd knocked over the trash trying to help. You're a disaster, she said on her knees with a sponge. Look who's talking curry hands. She flicked soap suds at me. I flicked back. We ended up soaked, laughing the floor cleaner than it had been in years. I started noticing things. The way she hummed when she sketched. The way she always left the window cracked even in the rain. The way she'd fall asleep on the couch with Mochi on her chest, and her laptop still open to a mood board. I'd cover her with a blanket, close the laptop, and leave her there. She'd wake up hours later, shuffle to her room, and leave a post-it on my door. Thanks for the blanket. You're not as useless as you look. I started leaving notes too. Your smoothie was 8:10. Needed more banana. Mochi stole my sock. Again. Font choice approved. We still had rules. She knocked before entering my room. I knocked before entering hers. But the knocks got softer, the doors stayed open longer. One Saturday, we biked to the farmer's market on Alberta. She wore a denim jacket with pins from every city she'd visited. I wore the same hoodie I'd had since college. We bought strawberry sourdough and a tiny succulent she insisted would survive our neglect. We argued over who carried the heavier bag. I let her win. On the way back, she rode ahead, hair flying, laughing when Mochi's carrier bounced in my basket. I watched her and thought, this is what it feels like when the apartment isn't just a place to sleep. That night we cooked together. Real cooking. Pasta with garlic and tomatoes from the market. She chopped. I stirred. Mochi watched from the counter, tail flicking. We burned the garlic. We over-salted the sauce. We ate it anyway, cross-legged on the floor, passing the pan back and forth. You know, she said, mouthful, you're not terrible at this. You're not terrible at not burning things. She smiled. High praise. I looked at her, really looked. The way the kitchen light caught in her hair. The way she licked sauce off her thumb without thinking. The way Mochi had claimed her lap like it was always his. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The rules were still there. But they were bending. And neither of us seemed to mind. One Friday night, the rain came down hard, the kind that turns the streets into mirrors and makes the neon signs on Alberta bleed pink and blue. I was at a classmate's going-away party in a cramped bar off Killingsworth, cheap beer, louder music than necessary people I hadn't seen since sophomore year, slapping me on the back and asking what I'd been up to. I stayed longer than I meant to, nursing a single IPA, checking my phone every 10 minutes for no reason. Around midnight, I biked home through the downpour, hoodie-soaked, shoes squelching. The apartment building's front door was propped open with a pizza box someone had abandoned. I shook off like a dog in the hallway and climbed the stairs 2 at a time. The door to 2B was unlocked. That was new. Inside, the living room lamp was on low, casting a warm gold pool over the couch. Mochi was sprawled across the armrest, belly up, purring in his sleep. On the coffee table, a covered plate, a fork, and a note in Mia's looping handwriting. Rice in the warmer. Don't order Thai again. I saw the receipt in the trash. Heat 2 min. Emmy and I stood there dripping on the rug, reading it twice. The rice was still hot, fragrant with ginger and scallion. There was a side of stir-fried broccoli she knew I pretended not to like but always finished. I ate standing at the counter, one hand holding the plate, the other scrolling through my phone. No texts, no missed calls, just the quiet hum of the fridge and Mochi's snoring. I rinsed the plate, set it in the drying rack, and noticed the new posted on the fridge door, a tiny doodle of Mochi wearing a chef's hat with the words, "He says you're welcome." I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. The next morning, Mia was already up, blender silent for once. She was at the table, headphones around her neck, sketching on a tablet. The succulent we'd bought at the market sat between us, still alive, a minor miracle. She didn't look up when I poured coffee. Rough night, she asked. Old friends, loud music, same stories. Sounds exhausting. It was. I slid into the chair across from her. Thanks for the rice. She shrugged, stylus moving in quick, confident strokes. You looked like death in that photo Elliot posted. Figured you'd need carbs. I laughed. You stalk my Instagram now, only when I'm bored. She finally glanced up, eyes soft. You okay? The question was simple, but it landed heavy. I thought about the party, everyone asking what I was doing, where I was going, like my life needed a 5-year plan to be valid. I thought about biking home in the rain, the unlocked door, the note on the table. Yeah, I said. I'm good. She nodded, went back to her sketch. I watched her for a minute, the way she chewed her lip, when she concentrated, the way her ponytail had started to unravel again. Mochi jumped onto the table, walked across her tablet like he owned the place. She didn't shoo him. She just adjusted the screen so he wouldn't smudge the lines. Later that week, her phone buzzed during dinner takeout pizza because neither of us felt like cooking. She glanced at the screen and her face changed. Not dramatic, just still. She silenced it, set it face down. I didn't ask, but an hour later she knocked on my open door, soft like she was testing if I was awake. I was at my desk, headphones off, pretending to work. Hey, she said. Can I come in? I waved her in. She sat on the edge of my bed, knees pulled to her chest. Mochi followed, curled up beside her like a heated pillow. X, she said quietly. Wedding invite. Came in the mail today. I nodded. The one from Texas? Yeah, big church, string quartet, the whole thing. She picked at a loose thread on my blanket. I thought I was over it, like really over it. But seeing the photo, I don't know. I leaned back in my chair. You want the speech? The "you're better off" one. She smiled small. Nah, I've heard it. Good. Because I'm bad at speeches. I rolled my chair closer. Remember when I lost that external drive, 3 months of work, client files, everything? You told me. Squirrel chewed the cable. Yeah. I sat on the floor and cried like a baby, then I rebuilt it. Took twice as long. But the new version was better. Because I had to start over. She looked at me, eyes glassy but steady. You think people are like hard drives? No. People are messier. But sometimes losing the old version makes room for something you didn't know you needed. She was quiet for a long time. Then she leaned over, rested her head on my shoulder. Just for a second. Her hair smelled like coconut shampoo and rain. Thanks, she whispered. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just let her stay there until Mochi decided he wanted the spot and wedged himself between us. The next few weeks were small things. She helped me pick a color palette for a branding project, argued for sage green until I caved. I helped her assemble a flat-pack shelf for her fabric samples, cursed the instructions in 3 languages. We argued over whether to upside down the pots her system or nest them mine. We settled on a hybrid that satisfied no one but worked. One night we stayed up until 3 finishing her final presentation. I made coffee. She made grilled cheese with too much butter. We sat on the floor backs against the couch slides, glowing on the TV. When she nailed the last transition, she fist-pumped like she'd won the lottery. You're going to kill it, I said. We're going to kill it, she corrected. You fix the kerning on slide 12. I laughed. She laughed. Mochi yawned. The morning of her critique, I woke to the smell of eggs. Not burnt, not rubbery, perfectly half-cooked with a sprinkle of pepper and a side of toast. She'd left a note: fuel. Don't choke. M. She came home that afternoon with a grin that could have powered the city. A minus, she said, kicking off her shoes. He said the chair was almost innovative. High praise from Professor Doom. We celebrated with cheap champagne and Mochi stealing olives from the tray. Summer turned to fall. The maple outside dropped its leaves in slow motion. We raked them together, arguing over whose pile was bigger. We carved pumpkins on the fire escape. Hers was a cat, mine was a failed attempt at a donut. We left the windows open even when it got cold because Mochi liked to watch the rain. One night I came home late again. The door was unlocked. The lamp was on. On the table, a bowl of ramen, still steaming chopsticks crossed neatly on top. The note read, "Don't order junk." I saw the app history. Eat. I ate at the counter, Mochi on the stool beside me, tail flicking. The ramen was spicy, just the way I liked it. I looked around the clean counters, the succulent still alive, the stack of her sketchbooks next to my Wacom tablet. The apartment didn't feel like a place I was waiting to leave anymore. It felt like a place I'd already arrived. I never told her I loved her. She never said it either. We didn't need to. It was in the eggs that didn't burn. In the blender that started at 6:30 and the window left cracked. In the way she knocked softer now, and the way I always left the porch light on when she worked late. It was in the quiet moments, Mochi asleep between us on the couch, the rain on the roof, the radiator finally giving up its clank for a steady hum. If one day she packs her suitcase with the cat sticker and walks out that door, I'll miss the blender at dawn. I'll miss the arguments over milk. I'll miss the way she says my name like it's a question and an answer at the same time. But until then, the door stays unlocked, the rice stays warm, and the eggs are always half-cooked with just a little pepper. Not too much. Bye-bye.